Alright, so let me give you some additional help for the quiz on 6.3 and 6.4. Some things that I'm noticing that I want to make sure you're absolutely prepared for. Let me start with adding, subtracting, like terms. What do I mean by that? Well, if you have 5x to the 1/4 plus 3x to the 1/2, you cannot add these. X to the 1/4 and x to the 1/2. These are unlike terms. That's as far as you can go. You cannot combine these. Alternatively, if you had 5x to the 1/4 plus 3x to the 1/4, meaning they were both x to the 1/4, if they're both the same, it means they're like terms, and we can't add 5 plus 3 and get 8. Or you could subtract. If it was 5x to the 1/4 minus 3x to the 1/4, you would have 2x to the 1/4. So in B we can add because these are the same, they're like terms, and A we cannot. The other thing I'll mention again is domain. Let's pretend that f of x equals 3x plus 2 and g of x equals 4x to the 1/2, and I asked you to do f of x plus g of x. Okay. Well, f of x plus g of x is 3x plus 2 plus 4x to the 1/2. I cannot combine any of these terms. I have an x term, a constant, and an x to the 1/2. For the same reason, A cannot be combined, this cannot be combined either. Now, if I want to find the domain, I take the domain of f of x. And what's the domain of f of x? Well, are there any division by 0? No. Are there any roots? No. So it's all reals. For g of x, though, I have x to the 1/2. That's an even root. When I have an even root, I can't have negative numbers for x. So it's all reals where x is greater than or equal to 0. And for my answer, which is right here, I also have the even root. So it's all reals where x is greater than or equal to 0. Now, for my final answer of domain, I take the intersection of all three of these. And so I have all reals where x is greater than or equal to 0, and all reals where x is greater than or equal to 0. So the domain of my final answer is all reals where x is greater than or equal to 0. So this would be part of your answer, and this would be part of your answer. Now, if I asked you to do f of g of x, meaning a composite, I'll use these same two functions, this f of x, this g of x. F of g of x will equal 3 times 4x to the 1/2 plus 2. That's the same thing as this. And I can combine the 4 times the 3. Okay, that's my f of g of x. Now my domain is, since it's a composite, it's the inner, which is g of x. Well, the domain of g of x is all reals where x is greater than or equal to 0, and the domain of my answer is also, because of the 1/2 here, the even root, all reals where x is greater than or equal to 0. And I take the intersection of those. Again, this is the inner, this is the answer. So for this problem, my domain is all reals where x is greater than or equal to 0. So this would be the two parts. Just a reminder, if I gave you y equals 3x plus 7 and I asked you to find the inverse, okay, you'll swap the x's and the y's, and you'll solve for y. Remember, if I ask you to verify inverses, you're going to use the rule. You're going to calculate f of g of x, you're going to calculate g of f of x, and if both of these are x, then the two functions are inverses. If f of g of x is not equal to x and g of f of x is not equal to x, meaning just one of them doesn't have to be equal to x, then you're going to tell me on the quiz that f of x and g of x are not inverses. Finally, I'm going to give you a function, a graph. I'm going to ask you if there's an inverse to that function. In this case, it's a line. And if the horizontal line goes through at one point, which it does here, you'll say yes, this function has an inverse. If it turns out the graph is something like this, or the line intersects at more than one point, we'll say it does not have an inverse. So this is the second set of review tips for this quiz. I hope that's helpful. Good luck.